Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of traveling with someone who is a wheelchair user. Be sure to check out part 1 of my first 5 tips of traveling with a person who is a wheelchair user. And this is part 2, where I have 5 more tips for you. My husband, who is a C6 quadriplegic, paralyzed from the chest down, and I have traveled thousands of miles together. We've been on Alaskan cruises. We've flown to Hawaii. We've driven to the Florida Keys. We've traveled with a caravan of Mini Coopers across the United States, from Atlanta, Georgia, all the way to Thermal, California. We have taken excursions on buses, catamarans, boats, and land cruisers. So we've been able to travel and really enjoy the world together. And we have a ton of fun. My first tip is to pack for success. It is important when you're traveling with someone who is a wheelchair user to make sure that you have everything that you need for that trip ahead of time. My husband and I travel in Mini Coopers, and so we pack very condensed, and everything has to fit in the car. With our Mini Cooper, with our daughter in the back, with his chair in the back, and enough food for the trip, as well as everything that we need. And so the way that we do that is to make a list ahead of time of everything that we're going to need to bring on the trip. And this includes medications, this includes enough clothing for the trip, but then it's going to also include some medical supplies that are needed. And so just in case, I always bring a little first aid kit along with me that includes some extras. So not only am I going to bring some Band-Aids, but I'm also going to bring some gauze. I'm going to bring some tape. I'm going to bring wound care gel, just in case we get a red spot or something like that on the trip. We don't want it to result in big skin breakdown. And so I always need to be prepared with everything that I might need. And so that does include some dressing supplies. So I definitely take that along. Some other things that can really be useful are having the medications that you need available. So if you need pain medications, or if they need just any kind of medication. So it's common, someone who's a wheelchair user may also be taking some medications. And one thing that I really like to bring, let me get it. So I really like to have a little tin container. And this is great for holding all kinds of little knickknacks, but then I can keep this in my purse, and if my husband needs medications, it's just this cute little container that can hold little pills and stuff. And so that's great to have along on the trip. If you're flying, then you may need to have the label medications in the pill containers that they came in, along with the prescription numbers and everything. But I'll take that along in the car, and any little tin container will do, like an Altoids container. Just make sure that you know what are the medications that are in that tin, and record, if you can, when they were taken, just so you have a general idea. Some other medical supplies that you might need are maybe extra catheters, in case your partner uses that for bladder management. You may need extra supplies like that. So if you have a home care nurse, ask how they would insert a catheter, and make sure as a caregiver or family member that you're trained on how to do that ahead of time in case you run into some emergencies. And I would recommend, if you have a medical supply company, if you can have them send extra supplies, that's great. But if not, quite honestly, a lot of medical supplies you can purchase on Amazon, and they have a great selection. And I would check out the reviews and just make sure that the supplies themselves are okay, but that can be a great way to have some backup emergency supplies in case you need them. My second tip in this 2-part series is to work together as a team. Anything that you can put your heads together and do together is best. So rather than you planning the entire trip, or the person who is a wheelchair user planning the entire trip, that you work together on it. My husband and I work together as a team. He actually does all of the driving of the Mini, and I'm a co-pilot. And instead of being a co-pilot that just reads books the entire time or tunes out or listens to music, I try to be actively involved in the driving, and so making sure I have directions pulled up ahead of time and make sure we know where we're going, and then I can give those directions. I also do all the snack packing, and so I make sure that we have enough food and snacks along for the trip, and that is really important. And then the other thing is to stay hydrated. We used to bring a big pack of waters that I would put in the back of the Mini, and that we would have those, but being more environmentally conscious, now I take hydro flasks, and those work great actually, that I'll fill them with cold water. I had an itch, sorry. That I will fill those with cold water and some ice, and they last a pretty good amount of time. And then most gas stations, if you ask them, they will allow you to top off a refill in the US anyhow, that you can still maintain and keep fresh water. But I always recommend having plenty of water on hand. And in terms of packing for success, you're also going to need sunscreen and hats. Sunburns or getting too cold or too hot can be a big deal to someone who might have a compromised immune system or someone who is a wheelchair user. So really very important to keep healthy, not get sunburned, and not have those kinds of issues on the trip. And then keep everything healthy in terms of bladder and bowel management throughout the trip, figuring out bathroom stops if you need those, or making sure that there's a way to access a bathroom at least at some points during the trip. Those are important things along the way. My third tip in this two-part series is to write down what works. Over time, you're going to maybe forget about what you did on a particular travel trip that really worked well. So if you have something that works well, be sure to reflect at the end of each day of travel and keep a notebook or a journal or even an Apple Pencil. That's what I use. And I just make sure that I can write down what works and what doesn't work, and then save it. My husband also loves to use, and I'm filming on the phone so I can't use it, but use the Notes app in the phone and just create categories for travel. And then you can come back and search it. But we'll write down room numbers that were particularly accessible. A hotel we had a great experience with, and this has been quite some time ago, but that was the Ashley Inn, and they really paid attention to small details that made a really big difference for someone who's in a wheelchair. Everything was super accessible and just so easy. But we also noticed in general, Oregon just seems to be a really accessible state. So I don't know if it was because of the state that we were in, or if it was really because the Ashley Inn is just a really great place to stay. But in case we ever stay there again, we have the room number written down. We have the names of the restaurants that we went to that worked really well. And then we also make sure to take pictures while we're there. And just in case we forget to write anything down, that we can always go back. My fourth tip is to plan for FU charges. And I do mean FU charges, we'll just call them fees underneath. And these are the extra fees that are just a natural part of traveling with a wheelchair. It costs more money, it's a little bit more expensive, and you're going to want to budget for that. Some examples are, you might not be able to save money by staying at a friend's house because the friend's house might not be accessible. And even if the friend thinks it might be, and they say, you know, we just have a couple of steps up on the patio and we can help lift and get them in, and we do have a bathroom on the first floor, that doesn't mean it's going to be accessible, and it may just be a hassle when you get there. So just plan to have a hotel anyway. I think that's always going to be best. And then you can relax and just know that you have an accessible place to stay. So that's an FU charge. You just have to deal with it. I've gone to conferences before where we were unable to get a discount rate for a block of rooms reserved for the conference because my husband needed an accessible room. And so it costs a little bit more money. You may have to eat at different restaurants than everyone else, and then maybe not get a discounted rate if you're traveling with a group. There's just all kinds of hidden fees sometimes that you may encounter that cost a little bit more because you have someone that's traveling in a wheelchair. I'm not saying that's right by any means, but sometimes that's the reality, and we just have to plan for it in order to have a good time. And if you budget for it, and I would just plan to budget 10 to 20% above what you think it would normally cost and what you would normally budget for that trip, and then go ahead and just plan that extra. Save a little bit extra, plan a little bit extra, find other ways to be able to fund your travel so that you can have a good time. My fifth and final tip is to plan something for yourself. Oftentimes as caregivers, we're so focused on the person that we're taking care of that we neglect and forget about ourselves. And so while I said in part one that this is an inclusive trip and you want to be able to include your travel partner, it's also really important that you take care of yourself so that you can take care of someone else better. So oftentimes I really enjoy going shopping, and my husband doesn't like shopping anyhow, or at least not window shopping. So I'll let him know I want to go shopping on this trip and you're welcome to come with me, but I might be going in some stores that aren't all accessible and I would like to be able to do that. And so he'll come with me, and maybe he'll wait outside or he'll go to another place so that I can get my fix too. Or maybe he'll decide to plan something else where he goes to lunch with a friend or something like that. And then I'm able to go to do something that I really want to do on the trip. And it's not going to take a huge amount of time. It's just something enjoyable. I'm also an introvert, and so after a while being around people too much gets a little bit intense, including my husband. I love being around him, but I also like to just spend some time alone. And so I'll plan to go for a walk or just to do something by myself and make sure he's all taken care of. He could sit by the pool or do something in the hotel, or even just lay in bed and watch some TV while I go do something fun for myself. And then when I come back, everybody's a little bit happier and it's a lot more pleasant of an experience. All right, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.